I'm Deontay Burton, and I'm down to dunk.
I'm Hamidou Diallo.
Hey, I'm Danilo Gallinari.
I'm Chris Paul, and I'm down to dunk.
I'm Lou Dort, and I'm down to Dort.
What's Dort?
I'm not gonna lie, I don't know what that was.
In English, bro.
I'm Darius Baisley, and I'm down to dunk.
I'm Shea Gilgeous-Alexander.
I'm Steven Adams.
I'm Andre Robertson, and I'm down to dunk. On you.
I gotta say, I'm just fired up to be here today. It's pretty cool.
Welcome to Down to Dunk. I'm your host, Andrew Schlecht, part of the Athletic Podcast Network. With me this morning is my good friend Alex Speers. Alex, what's up?
Good morning.
Morning. It's Wednesday, October 14th. There's not really much basketball news out there.
Yeah, right, Andrew. You revealed a big scoop to me right when I got on.
Huge scoop. The Thunder are apparently going to interview a guy named Dan Craig.
Never had heard of him before. Turns out he's been with the Heat for 17 years.
If you would like to, for those of you that are joining us on Periscope or YouTube, I'm going to show you a picture of Dan Craig just to get familiar. And this is, to me, this has kind of been what I've thought all along, is that it's going to be somebody that you've just never heard of. It's going to be like when they picked Darius Baisley in the draft. It's like, who? You might be vaguely familiar with them. But, I mean, it's, you know what? It sounds good to say the Thunder are hiring a Heat assistant, right?
I know. This is how it usually works in the NFL. Like the team that makes the Super Bowl or wins the Super Bowl, their offensive or defensive coordinator is like the hot guy. And everybody just wants to grab that guy and try to replicate what that team did. And so, yeah, it makes sense from that perspective. Like, obviously, the Heat looked really good, and everything about their organization and culture seems amazing. So if you can get the guy who's been there for 17 years and is now the lead assistant with Spo, I mean, how could you not be excited? And he's only 38, so you can have him for another 38 years.
Perfect. It's perfect. Dan Craig. Hot guy, Dan Craig.
Hot guy.
Oh, man. So, I mean, it's going to be somebody like this. Dan Craig, Will Hardy, who's out of the Spurs. It's going to be somebody like this that they're going to interview, and you're probably not going to hear a lot about it, and then they're just going to one day release the Thunder have hired Dan Craig, which, if you can see his face right now, he looks like the most Dan Craig guy ever.
Wow, I'm looking at pictures of Will Hardy now, though. He must be super young.
Yeah, he's very young.
He looks even younger.
Yeah, well, we can pull up some pictures of Will Hardy.
Wow, well. He's only been with the Spurs since 2013 when he started as a video coordinator.
Yeah, he interviewed with the look how young he looks in this picture. He interviewed with the Knicks, and the Knicks were very impressed with him. Look at him. He looks like he's 14 in this picture.
Yeah.
But, yeah, he's a guy. He's totally a guy. He's a guy that they could hire.
He looks like he could be on Down to Dunk on an average week. Hey, we're bringing in our new friend, Will Hardy. Went to high school with the guy. I think you guys are really going to like him.
Maybe we can get Will on the pod. Just now. And just see what he does.
I mean, that's exciting. I'm just waiting for everything. Although, did you see the article by John Hollinger where he kind of mapped out the next year? And it's all, of course, very tentative. But it at least made me feel like, okay, finally stuff is about to happen. Like he was saying by early to mid-November, they're going to set the salary cap, figure that out. Then we're going to have the draft on the 18th. We're probably going to have some type of free agency starting in December. So we're going to have a lot of news to talk about through then. And then he put as a target date January 18th, which previously from people like Bill Simmons, I had heard, MLK Day or even later. But John Hollinger was saying that January 18th is really the last or the latest you could go and not have to overlap with football at the end of the year if you want to do a full 82-game season. which still sounds crazy because he's saying like doing an 82 game season in 150 days. And obviously it wouldn't look like a normal season. They would try to cut down on travel to make that not as insane as it sounds. But that's exciting. That's not too far away.
It's really not, honestly. I wouldn't mind if it were pushed even further back. But
that's 2 months.
Yeah. No, I mean, and it's going to be
that's 3 months.
It's going to be it will be a wild 3 months. I mean, it's going to be quiet really for maybe 2 more weeks. And then stuff is going to start trickling in.
Yeah, like all the I mean, I'm so excited about this draft. We can just jump right into it because I'm getting more excited the closer we get.
Yeah.
Only because the uncertainty at the top. That's what's like hooked me in. The fact that no one in the league is really certain that either the teams in the top two spots really want to make that pick.
Right.
And so Sam Vecini just released his, I don't know what number mock this is. Is this number 8 or something?
Yeah, 8.0.
8.0. And my first takeaway from reading this was that no one really knows what the T-Wolves and what the Warriors really want to do. And he was talking about how there's kind of this dichotomy between their two approaches where the Timberwolves are super silent. No one knows what they're going to do. Whereas the Warriors have been leaking like one thing a week.
Right.
In fact, the most recent one, I think it was that Devin Vassell guy saying that they like him enough to like take him at 2 if they have to, but they might want to try to trade back.
There's no way you take Devin Vassell at 2. I like Vassell a lot. There's just no chance you take him at 2.
Right. But it's a really interesting question for both of these teams because you don't get a top 2 pick every single year. And so you feel like you have to do something with it. And they're all trying to maximize whatever value they can get out of it. And for a lot of people in the league right now, it seems like maximizing that value doesn't necessarily mean taking anyone with that pick. But then, of course, you have to figure out a trade. And no one's really thrown out any like great trades that I've seen so far.
Yeah, I mean, Miles Turner is definitely one that makes sense for the Warriors to me.
Yeah.
Some iteration of Miles Turner back to the Warriors. Because you're not guaranteed to get somebody as good as Miles Turner in this draft, unfortunately.
Right.
I mean, at number 2, I mean, he has James Wiseman sitting there, and that's just for the purpose of that he thinks that if somebody traded for this pick, that's who they would take. But like, James Wiseman's not guaranteed to be as good as Miles Turner, and he's perfect for the Warriors, right? Protects the rim on the defensive end, allows them to play bigger. Like you can play bigger with the Warriors with him, and still have Draymond as your 4, and then on offense, Draymond becomes your 5.
Right, and that was it in this article or was it somewhere else? The idea that one of the responses to the Lakers championship is that the other contenders need to make sure that they have some cavalcade of big men that they can throw out there when they need them. Not necessarily like you have to have a starting quality center, but you have to have some big man to match up with the Lakers.
Mm-hmm. I'm not sure that that's Kevon Looney.
It's probably not.
Probably not Kevon Looney.
Hey, but okay, so before we get into this, we should start with the Thunder because we have nothing else to talk about. And Sam Vecini chose a guy for us, and so we have to pretend like this is who we're actually going to get. And look who it is. It's a guy we talked about last week, Rivals.com. I was looking for guys who are ranked highly coming out of high school, might have fallen, and Isaiah Stewart was one of those guys. And you poo-pooed it. You poo-pooed it. You said he's a dinosaur. He was in Jurassic Park. He's not. He can't do anything in the modern NBA. But let me read the people out there what Sam Vecini says. He says he's one of the most liked bigs by front offices due to his terrific work ethic and motor. He was one of the most productive players in college basketball last season. Evaluators are also big believers in his ability to shoot the basketball. Folks who went up to Washington's practices this season said that he was knocking down shots from distance with ease. He also hit 77% of his free throws. Ultimately, though, Stewart will be a rim-running, rim-protecting 5 who rebounds it well and provides a tough interior presence. Now, what's bad with that? That sounds pretty good.
Yeah, he's ground bound. There's that. Like, he's not a great athlete. And the same stuff was leaking out about Sabonis during the draft that, Sabonis hit 80 out of 100 threes.
And now he shoots threes.
But he doesn't really.
Well, I mean, he shoots them more than, I don't know. I read that description.
Yeah.
And it seemed like there was some upside there. And then I factored in that he was like number 2 or whatever we saw on Rivals.com coming out of high school.
Yeah.
It's
just a monster. Like, he's in high school. Like, this is like playing against this just gigantic monster man. I mean, he's going to kill all the high school guys for sure. But then you get to the NBA, like, he's not 7 feet is one thing about him. He's 6'9", and he's only a center, like, only, period. That's it. You could even pretend that Sabonis was a 4. You could pretend it. You can pretend it next to Miles Turner. Oh, he's the 4. Oh, whatever. You're not going to do that with Isaiah Stewart. I mean, to me, his upside is he's your backup center.
Why? But you know who else is a 6'9" center?
Who?
Bam Adebayo.
Bam Adebayo.
Tell me why Isaiah Stewart isn't Bam Adebayo.
He's just not the athlete. He's just not even close to the athlete.
You say that, then why was he ranked so highly coming out of high school?
I mean, Kendrick Perkins was ranked highly coming out of high school.
Yeah, but that was a different time. This is in 2020. This guy was ranked this highly.
And Byron, don't call me BJ Mullins, number 1, baby. Big guys are typical. I mean, those guys just destroy in high school because no one's that big in high school, right?
Yeah, but it's not like he's a crazy 7-footer.
I know. But even 6'9", was there one guy that was 6'9" on our high school basketball team? Like, I don't think.
Well, Sam Bradford is 7 feet tall.
I was going to say Sam Bradford was the tallest guy on the team, I think. I mean, I would be way more pumped and jacked if they took Leandro Bolmaro. Way more pumped and jacked about that.
Why?
He's this 6'8" international forward. He's got great feel for the game. He's really more of a guard than a forward. Like, the way he plays he's more of a guard. And he's going to be a role player type of guy as well. Obviously, I mean, you don't get to this part of the draft and be like, this is a star. But he's a guy that will fit in with an offense. He's just got great feel for the game. And I want guys that have good feel for the game. That has good size. And he can score off the bounce some. Like Trey Jones, meh. Malachi Flynn, meh. Xavier Tillman, kind of interesting. He's kind of similar to Stewart. Then like Tyrell Terry, like, take a swing at Tyrell Terry. The problem is he's really short, like too short. But some people say he's grown. Some people say he's 6'3" now. If that's true, then he has to be a first rounder. But I don't know if that's true or not. It's funny when they're like, this guy is 6'1" in shoes, or he's 6'1" in socks. Like, why? Like, who measures guys in socks? Like, when they're never going to play on the court in socks. Like, why would you measure them in socks?
I don't know why they do it. I don't know why they do a lot of what they do in the pre-draft process.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so fine. You don't like Isaiah Stewart, even though you should.
I think that Stewart will be a pro. I think he will for sure be a pro. And if all you're looking for is to land a guy that will be a part of a rotation as a big guy, then he'll play. He'll play next year. And that would not surprise me if he played next year.
Now, what do you think about Sam Vecini's comment that, Steven Adams is on the way out? It would be a nice guy you could slot in. Like, do you think the Thunder, in the way they conceptualize this team in the future, are planning to have another traditional center?
I just have no idea, to be honest. I have no clue. I think, and it's not a foregone conclusion that Steven's just gone. I mean, Steven's not 32.
Is he not?
No. No. He could stick around for a little while. I mean, his contract expires. I mean, I just have I have a hard time believing they're going to trade him just from the standpoint that I don't know that you could extract value out of him at this point.
Oh yeah, I'm thinking more like, you let Isaiah play behind for a year, then the year after you unleash Isaiah Stewart. Everyone's like, wow, how did he fall? Look at this big man they found.
Yeah, no one says that though.
What are you talking about? That happens all the time.
Who?
Clint Capella, Rudy Gobert,
Yeah.
Nikola Jokic.
Yeah.
Those type big guys just fall, especially more recently. I don't know. I just feel like you're getting more value instead of you're just like taking a shot in the dark on one of these wings. Whereas Isaiah Stewart has more pedigree than most of these guys around him.
Yeah.
Number 2 recruit.
He does.
5-star.
Like I would, and I like Jalen McDaniels has a higher ceiling certainly, but his floor is like he's out of the league.
Yeah, I didn't like the description of him.
He's not. He scares me big time. Like I'd rather take Isaiah Stewart. These guys were teammates at Washington, but I would rather take Stewart just for the fact that this is a rotation guy.
This is what Sam said about Jaden McDaniels. He also showed intermittent flashes of immaturity and emotion, resulting in 6 technical fouls and poor body language on the court. He also fouled out on a somewhat astounding 8 times while playing on the wing, over 1/4 of his games played, while not displaying a high-level feel for the game. He also had a strongly negative assist-to-turnover ratio. And those turnovers don't even account for the shot selection-based mistakes that result in the same outcome as turnovers. That was a pretty devastating couple of sentences there.
Yeah,
for Jaden.
Yeah, I would not. And I don't. I mean, he's like Perry. He's like your Perry Jones Redux. That's what he is.
Oh, 2.0.
Yeah, Perry Jones 2.0.
Oh, I'm back in now.
I'd be in on Josh Green. I kind of like him. He's your wing that that is probably he's a Thunder wing. He's the guy that can't really shoot but has good length and athleticism. I kind of like him. But you can go to theathletic.com/down to dunk and get The Athletic for $1 a month. It's only through podcasts right now, so make sure that you do that. And it would really be nice if you would enter in theathletic.com/down to dunk and subscribe. Just $1. Be great.
Some other things that jumped out to me. One, RJ Hampton going from number 21 in draft 7.0 to number 12. And based on this description, the main reason that has happened is because of those videos that came out showing him shooting in an empty gym. Those have been the main thing that have swayed people because his shot form looks so much different now.
It's the only thing that's happened, really.
Yeah. And now he's a lottery pick.
Oh man. Yeah. I mean, if the shooting's real, then yeah, you have to take him in the lottery. I mean, there's a lot of guys in this lottery that I don't love. I'm gonna feel really bad when the Hornets take Anthony Edwards because I'm just not a huge believer.
Yeah, I know. Especially Sam was talking about how James Wiseman would fit really well for them, and that was the first time I'd really thought about it, and it was like, you know what, that would be a nice fit for them. Like, I hope they get Wiseman.
I do too. I would like some good fortune for the Hornets, but if Wiseman's taken second and they feel like they have to take Anthony Edwards just because he's high on every mock draft and it's kind of like this like groupthink pick, I don't know, man. I'm just not a huge believer in him. There's a lot of guys. I mean, I would even take Obi Toppin over him, maybe. I don't know. He's a kind of guard that's like he's very Dion. He's very, very Dion.
And that's what apparently some of the executives were comparing him to Dion Waiters, which is not a great comparison at this point.
No, like Halliburton. I really like Tyrese Halliburton. I like Okoro. I'm leaning more Okoro over Edwards just because Okoro is gonna play so hard, and if Okoro, he's another guy that if he can shoot, he's a star. But it's a big if. Like it's a big ask.
Right.
But if he gets there, he's a star. Edwards didn't give the same energy and effort all the time and didn't defend well. And Okoro like just did it all the time. And so like if I'm the Hornets, I mean I might trade back and let somebody else risk Anthony Edwards and take Okoro or take I don't know. I would take Toppin. I would take Halliburton. To me, he's such a big risk. He has huge upside because if he hits, then he is a star. But if he misses, then you're probably trading him in 3 years.
Yeah, it kind of seems like he's destined to put up a lot of inefficient stats on a bad team.
Yeah, and the Hornets have enough of that with Terry Rozier and Devontae Graham, right? That's what those guys are.
Yeah, that's true.
And then you add Edwards to it, man. I would feel really bad for the Hornets if that's the case.
So the other question I wanted to ask you is, every year, depending on who wins the championship or who makes the finals, somebody tries to find a player on one of those teams to like replicate. Like, can we replicate this model in any way? And I don't think teams are necessarily looking at the Lakers saying, hey, we just need to go get another Anthony Davis. We can add that guy to our team, will be great. But Bam Adebayo does represent kind of like a new version of what centers can be, although he's kind of a continuation of Draymond. But that type of playmaking five has become more and more common in the league. And now we've seen multiple examples where it's been successful. So who is going to be getting the Bam bump? In other words, who are the maybe undersized centers that have a little playmaking and that are going to go much higher than they're currently projected simply because teams are like, this could be the next Bam. And I think I know who you're going to say, but tell me.
Well, it's Onyeka Okongwu for sure. And then Precious Achua is another one as well. I also think Okoro is going to get the Jimmy Butler bump because he's like this big, strong wing that rebounds and defends and gives effort all the time. He's very Jimmy and doesn't shoot real well. So he's very Jimmy. And so I feel like both those guys are going to get this heat bump where like you could see Okoro taken like 4th in the draft. And it's because like, wow, look what Jimmy Butler just did. And he didn't shoot threes. He didn't have to. Okoro doesn't have to shoot threes to be effective to change the game for us. And it may be right. I mean, that may be right. I mean, he could end up being the best wing in the draft. I mean, that wouldn't surprise me. Just because he does have that ceiling with the shooting. The shooting he's got to be a better shooter. But I mean, that's in play for him. But yeah, there's going to be this heat bump. And Okongwu is always going to be a top 10 pick. Let me see, where does he have Precious? Also, like Patrick Williams is another guy that when you
that was a guy reading about him. It kind of was intriguing. He's a little bit shorter. He's even smaller than Bam, but he has a huge wingspan.
Yeah.
And he talked about how he might have this untapped playmaking potential.
Yeah, he could be like, if there is a Draymond of this draft, like that could be Patrick Williams. I really like Patrick Williams.
He's super young. Look at that age, Andrew.
He's very young. And
18.
He was projected. He was one of those guys. He was a 5-star recruit type of guy, like pedigree all over the place. So I'm a big Patrick Williams guy. I like that he's rising in these mocks because to me it makes sense. Like definitely over guys like Aaron Naismith, who's like just a shooter. Definitely over Kyra Lewis. Then like Precious is a guy that is rising as well. Like he could be getting the Bam bump some because he's a really good defender, and is super mobile, and will definitely be a 5. So to me he's a guy as well that was in like the 20s, like mid 20s, and he's rising. So those guys to me are getting the bump, like this Miami Heat bump.
I'm looking over now. If there were a guy, and I know you've talked about with this Mikey, but now that you've thought about it a little bit more, you've probably been reading more draft coverage. If there was one person that the Thunder, let's say they're trading up to like 8, so you're kind of ruling out the top guys, but maybe they can get up to 8. Why'd I pick 8? Just a random number. Not associated with anything else. If they're at 8, who would you be targeting? Also, by the way, Sam Vecini has the Knicks taking Devin Vassell, which just seems like such a letdown. I know that he can be something, but Knicks are coming in. They have a new coach. Actually, I've been thinking about this because we were saying last week that, the Knicks probably aren't going to give up their 8th pick for something. But then I was reminded about the Jimmy Butler offer to the Timberwolves when they had Tom Thibodeau as their head coach, where the Rockets offered them 4 first-round picks plus salary filler for Jimmy Butler, and he didn't want to do it, instead taking the guys Robert Covington and Darius Saric because he knew that those would help him win. So you know that Tom Thibodeau's coming into this wanting to win because that's what he's wanted to do every single place he's been. He's never really been like a long-term developmental type of guy. So I don't know, just seeing a name like Devin Vassell where you're just like, okay, like he could be good, but I'm almost more convinced now that I factored Tom Thibodeau into it that they might be willing to trade the 8th pick if they can get back real NBA players.
Yeah, Vassell's somebody that I would consider at that spot for sure. I'd hate him on the Knicks, by the way, because they don't have a point guard. I mean, Vassell's a guy that needs a lot of time to get his shot off. He's not a guy that's going to create his own shot, but he's a 3. He's like strictly like a 3-and-D wing that can occasionally attack a closeout and hit a mid-range jump shot. But he needs time. He took few threes in college this past year just because he does need time to get that shot off, and there's no space at Florida State at all. But he's going to be a good defender. He's got good length. He's not huge. But I do think that he's a guy that will be a wing role player in the league for a long time. But I don't like him on the Knicks at all because I think that you need somebody that can set him up. And
you also need a coach who will play him.
You need a coach that will play him. Like I like him on the Wizards a lot, especially if John Wall can come back and play at all, because he's a guy that he's set up more. I think Fred said the other day that he is still like number 1 in corner 3 assists, even though in the last 5 years, even though he sat out all of last year. So I like him on the Wizards a lot. I don't like him on the Knicks. If the Thunder were to trade there, I would take Okongwu. If Okongwu was there, I'd take him without hesitation.
And give me the quick 30-second pitch for Okongwu.
He's 6'9". He can guard everybody.
Hey, you know who else is 6'9"? Isaiah Stewart.
Yeah.
We can wait on him. Same size. Okay, not convinced. Keep going.
Stewart guards 5, period. The end. Okongwu can guard everybody.
Well, based on their height,
he's got
pretty similar.
Right. He's got a really good touch around the rim, and he's got pretty good feel as well. And he's just so aggressive. Like you just watch him, just watch his highlights for 5 minutes, and like he's easily the most aggressive guy on the court. And he's not going to back down. He's gonna have a lot of dunks on people, like in their face. And so to have a guy like that setting a screen, who I think he'll be a great screener in the NBA, setting screens for SGA, playing next to a guy like Baisley is perfect. Where he's definitely not a traditional center for sure, but he's gonna run the floor like crazy as well as Baisley does. And to me, those guys together to me, that's a start of like a building block for sure. And then if you're going into next year and you're tanking, and this isn't really one of your picks that you think is going to take you to the top, but he could be certainly the starting center of the future for the Thunder. I mean, another guy you could consider is like oh no, go ahead. We'll
so Onyeka, is there any upside in terms of shooting and or playmaking ability?
Yeah, I think probably more playmaking is possible. It's hard to say though, But if he's only like a rim running guy, but he's different than like a Capella because he can defend everybody and he can move with everybody. So he's not somebody that will necessarily get played off the floor for that reason, which I really like. I really like him. I don't know why he's going 9. I feel like he should go a lot higher than that. I mean, if I'm the Knicks, I'd rather have him. I don't know that they've already got their center position.
Something related to that. So Ben, what is Ben's name? Thinking Basketball. He has a podcast. He also has a YouTube channel called Thinking Basketball. What? Ben Taylor, yeah. At the end of every season, he does his top 10 players in the NBA, and he just released that YouTube video. And I was watching it, and he had some really interesting stats. Of course, I don't remember what stat it was, but he was talking about how certain, like, quote-unquote traditional centers, but not even traditional because he included Brook Lopez and Miles Turner, in whatever this stat was about, like, their defensive impact, there's been a significant drop-off when these guys get to the playoffs.
Yeah.
Even someone like Brook Lopez or Miles Turner, who we think of as like a, modern 5 who can shoot and also defend. But his big example with it was Rudy Gobert, who in this stat had gone from like 2nd in impact to 54th in impact when he got to the playoffs. Wow. And I'm assuming one of those reasons is because when I do think of those guys, even the ones that I think of as a stretch 5, they don't really guard everyone. And so someone like Onyeka, if he can guard everyone on the court, maybe that's like what the real modern 5 needs to be.
Yeah.
As opposed to just shooting threes. I mean, that used to be all we were talking about.
Yeah.
If we could just get if we just get a center who shoots threes, if we can just get Steven Adams to shoot threes, we'll have unlocked everything.
Yeah. Okongwu's really young. He's 19. And
I like that.
He would have some potential to shoot corner threes as well, I think. I don't think that's not there. So for all those reasons, I really like him. And I also just I like having guys that give max effort all the time like that on your team, especially on a young team. Whereas if you take, if they came away with Okongwu, that'd be great. But if you came away with Jane McDaniels, okay, great. This is another dude that's gonna be just playing Xbox all the time and being late to practice and not doing everything you want him to do. And you just don't want those guys. I just don't, especially with a rebuild, you don't want those guys. You want guys like Okongwu. If Killian Hayes is there at 9, he's very intriguing as a guy that can play next to SGA. He's kind of similar to SGA. If his jumper is real, then he's going to be very good. And so to me, he's interesting. Patrick Williams is also a guy I would consider even as high as 8, just because he's the 6. He's a wing. He's probably more of a 4, which is if you really believe Darius Bazley is your forward of the future, then maybe you don't consider Patrick Williams. But to me, I feel like he could play some on the wing, and I'm a big fan of him.
Man, KOC would love it if we got Killian Hayes. If we moved up for Killian Hayes.
Yeah, that would be interesting. He would be very high on the Thunder's potential. He's very left-hand dominant, which is a little bit scary.
I like that. I'm left-handed.
Yeah.
That's a positive.
But Okongwu is my answer. He's my guy for 8, no doubt.
But yeah, going back to the Knicks, I'm just getting more and more convinced that they're going to make just a ton of moves in the hopes of making that team competitive. Mm-hmm. If only because their coach is Tom Thibodeau. I was just thinking more and more Tom Thibodeau is not going to want to coach an obvious 25-win team. He's not going to want to wait around.
No. And I'm sure the fan base is not super jacked about that. If the Thunder hired Tom Thibodeau, I'd be mortified.
Probably. But on the other hand, if they brought in enough guys, let's say they brought Chris Paul in and a few other guys, and were somehow able to get to 45 wins, and people are talking about the Knicks again, and the Knicks are in the playoffs and they're the 7th seed, all those fans would all of a sudden be excited because somebody would be talking about the Knicks in June.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it was very exciting to be a Thunder fan this year. I get that. But yeah.
Speaking of the Knicks real quick, there's a video, which you can go on NBA Reddit to get it. if you want to watch it. It's called Backstage Lakers.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about how the Lakers coaching staff and video coordinators prepare for each game. And it's like a little 8-minute thing. But it's really interesting because they happen to be filming on a game day when they were playing the New York Knicks. And so it starts with their video coordinators coming in at like 5:30 a.m. and starting to cut film and like make all of these video like showcases for all the players and coaches that they could watch on their iPads. And then you get to go into the coaches meeting, and Vogel is just like, this is a really good team. Talking about the Knicks, this is a really good team. Like, they don't have any star guys, but there's a lot of guys that scare you. There's a lot of guys that scare you on this team. And it was just amazing the amount of preparation that the LA Lakers, NBA champion LA Lakers, were putting into some like random January game against the New York Knicks. I mean, it was insane, the level of detail. And from everything you hear, like, the level of detail and preparation jumps exponentially in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. And so this is just what they were doing for just a regular. I mean, the Knicks were a 25-win team, and the Lakers were spending hours and hours poring over Knicks film. and Vogel's like talking to the guys like, hey guys, because this was after their head coaching change, like, they're 5-6 in their last couple games. Like, they're really turning things around. Like, we can't take this, which is what you have to do. But and I think instinctively I knew that the good teams did prepare this way, mm-hmm. but just to see it was like, wow, like, that's why Vogel is like a good, like, I watched that video and I'm like, wow, Vogel's a really great coach. Like, he was there at like 6 a.m. on this game day. Of course, he knows he's getting filmed, so I'm sure that factors into it. They're not going to make fun of the Knicks in front of the cameras.
Right.
But still.
Good, and you wouldn't get killed for it. People would probably collectively laugh together about that.
Yeah. But just the level of preparation was amazing. And I'm sure it's true for most good teams. I'd love to see like the prep for every team in the league just to see how they differ. Mm-hmm. It was really impressive, though. And then they go into that coach's room and you have like Lionel Hollins and you have Jason Kidd. You have like all these really high level assistant coaches. It was impressive. I was impressed by the Lakers coaching staff.
They're very good.
Yeah.
If you remember, Vogel did a podcast with Zach Lowe years ago and talked just about his level of preparation and about how he just really didn't sleep a whole lot. And they talked about like taking these like power naps and stuff, and how he would like sleep in his office on like a couch or something. And I was impressed with him back then. This was when he was the Pacers coach.
I mean, I've always heard that even about like the video coordinator jobs. In fact, somebody on the comments for this video was like, yeah, I know not one of these video guys, but a video guy for another team. And he said it's basically like working 2.5 full-time jobs, because everyone knows that there are a ton of guys who want that job. Yeah. There are a ton of people who want that job. And so you have to go 100% every single hour of every single day. Mm-hmm. And it just drains you over time, unless you are like really like in love with basketball. If this is not your passion, it would just apparently run you into the ground doing one of these jobs.
Yeah. Well, for the Athletic, Mo DeKeel was a video coordinator for the Clippers and for the Spurs. One other team, I can't remember which. But yeah, I mean, he's talked about how much detail you have to have and how much work you have to do. That it's insane.
And then there was Jared Dudley was on the Bill Simmons report, kind of going along with this, but they were talking about Frank Vogel and why he was such a good coach for LeBron. Mm-hmm. But he was giving an example of like in the playoffs in the first round, Vogel came up with like some adjustment for the Blazers and presented it in a pregame meeting, and LeBron just started like clapping. He like stood up and started clapping because he thought it was such like a good idea.
That's awesome. Because I mean, if you were to poll like all NBA writers before the season and say which coach is getting fired this year?
Oh, absolutely. And that's why I'm kind of torn on this idea. And you saw both sides of it after the Lakers won. It's like on one side, they have, 2 of the top 5 guys in the league. Like, of course they were going to win. And then on the other side, you have those videos that people have made showing all the pundits at the beginning of the year, which it kind of brought me back of like how much fun we were making of that Lakers roster. You know, because they have like Dwight Howard and Rondo and like just all these guys. You're like, who cares? Like these aren't. Nothing here is getting me excited.
Yeah.
And you start thinking about their defense, and there were all these tweets from like big accounts talking about like the Lakers are going to have a terrible defense. Like the Clippers are going to eat them alive.
Yeah.
And it was kind of nice to get back in that frame, that frame of mind from last summer where like it wasn't assumed that the Lakers were going to win the championship. And in fact, a lot of people were down on the Lakers.
Mm-hmm.
So are you on the side of like, we just underrated them and we should have always recognized that these are two of the top 5 guys? Or do you give the Lakers a little bit more credit for like putting together what they did with a roster that I still don't love? I still look at those players like, would you be excited if the Thunder went out and signed like a free agent Dwight Howard or Rajon Rondo? Like assuming we brought back this same team, we're trying to add a few more pieces for the playoffs. Would you be excited if we brought in Kyle Kuzma? Would you be excited if we brought in like any of these guys? No. Like they still aren't exciting me.
This is the LeBron effect though, right? I mean, he's done this throughout his entire career. He's played with guys that aren't great. I mean, he made Tristan Thompson into like a near max player on the Cavs, right?
Yeah.
Like when was the last time you heard the name Tristan Thompson?
It's been a while.
I mean, I haven't spoken his name on the podcast probably since LeBron was on the Cavs.
He probably just got pinged.
I mean, Matthew Dellavedova, did he have a career outside of playing with LeBron at all?
No, I think he got paid though.
Yeah, he did get paid.
Got a
LeBron
little money.
got paid. I mean, he's been doing this his whole career where he just elevates everybody's game around him so much to where if you're even close to a pro, he makes you look like you're actually a good role player. Like I feel like Alex Caruso is one of those guys. Alex Caruso was out of the league.
No, that is one guy where if the Thunder traded for him or like signed him, whatever he is, in the offseason, Thunder fans would be pretty pumped.
Pretty pumped and jacked. I also think that he'd be a disappointment.
Yeah, he would be.
I don't think you can't do the same things without LeBron next to you. That's just a fact. And so he's just been doing this his whole career. It honestly doesn't really matter who LeBron has around him, except for if he has another big time star next to him. I mean, that's when he has had his.
But at the same time, I feel like it takes him doing that again and again for people to recognize that, oh yeah, that is like what LeBron does. And I'm guilty of it too. I mean, the other thing I was thinking about was coming out of last season where LeBron has his first like quote unquote major injury of his career where he's out for an extended period of time. He's getting older. Like there was a very easy argument to make going into last season that like LeBron's not done, but he's definitely like in the twilight of his career.
Yeah.
And Anthony Davis has never really done anything as like the lead guy on his team. Mm-hmm. So I honestly think it made sense to like downplay the Lakers' chances going into last season. And I just want to give them credit for like completely proving me wrong, even though it feels so dumb now. It's like, why did I think this about LeBron James? Like, like you said, he's done this with guys year after year after year, and he just did it again. And now we're going to overcorrect, of course. Lakers will be like prohibitive favorites going into next season.
Yeah. And maybe they should be.
Maybe they should be. And maybe LeBron will be like the front runner for MVP. I mean, there's no way Giannis puts up the stats he puts up this year or even a little bit better. And everyone's like, yeah, let's give it back to Giannis, a guy who like can't get to the finals. Like no one's going to do that now.
They're going to make him prove it. It's kind of like James Harden.
Yeah.
Where like James wins and like James is like voted really high and then he loses in the playoffs so many times that you're just like, okay, like prove to me that something's different. Like show me something that's different. Like
prove to me that this matters, that any of this matters.
Exactly. Which I think that will be an interesting storyline. The Bucks will be very interesting. And I think that pressure could make him leave if they don't make the finals this next year.
Yeah, it's kind of funny in retrospect thinking about that 2016 season. Like it was rough going through it, but I don't remember really thinking too much about like the free agency question. I mean, I remember it came up in like January of that year. I think Ethan Sherwood Strauss was the first one to like drop the Warriors suggestion.
Yeah.
But I just remember that year more for just how disappointing the team was in that like all-star game period.
Yeah.
And then how great the playoff run was. But I wasn't thinking a lot about free agency during that time, or at least I don't feel like it in retrospect. Maybe we were talking about on every single show.
We weren't, because Kevin never gave any indication that he was going to go anywhere else.
Right.
And he like actively told people that he wasn't going anywhere. So, and it was just assumed that he was going to stay. I mean, a lot of people thought he'd stay, and I don't know. It got weird real fast. Kevin, I mean, has anybody's reputation changed faster than Kevin Durant's? Because he was like the golden child of the NBA. I mean, I firmly believe he would have at this point multiple MVPs, maybe multiple titles, maybe just one if he would have stayed with OKC. The dude is probably never going to win the MVP ever again because he's just not liked, right? I mean, what would he have to do to win the MVP next year?
I mean, they'd have to be the number 1 seed in the East, beating out like Raptors, Celtics, Bucks. I mean, he'd have to be right back to where he was with the Warriors. I mean,
33, 8, and 4, 2 steals and 2 blocks, 50, 40, 90, 63 games, win 63 games, something like that.
And I can't believe he's already 32. Somebody mentioned that the other day. I just wouldn't have pegged him that high.
Yeah.
32. He's getting up there.
Getting up. I mean, he and Russ and Harden are getting up there, man.
Yeah.
It's happening. You want to answer some of these questions so we can get out of here?
Sure.
Hot Zone Shay wants to know, what do you guys think of Darius Baisley's ceiling? Oh, what is that?
It's a thing for a tent.
Oh, nice. Oh, okay.
Baisley's ceiling.
Yeah.
I mean, absolute ceiling, how I feel right now would be like fringe all-star. I'm talking ceiling, like absolute ceiling, if everything worked out right.
Yeah.
Like a fringe all-star. Someone who's not going to make the all-star game, who's not even going to be the replacement if someone gets hurt, but who a few smart people are going to say, you know what? Darius Baisley deserves some consideration. He deserves to be in the conversation. He deserves a seat at the table.
So he's like not saying that he is this type of player, but he could be this level of player, like Serge's level.
Yeah, like that type of a level of player. That's how I feel right now in terms of his absolute ceiling.
Yeah, I don't think that's crazy. Because I mean, like, how many? Or also, like, John Hamm's made this comp, but how many All-Star games did Lamar Odom make? Did he make an All-Star game?
Oh man, I would assume he did, but now I don't know. He had to have. Lamar Odom was so good.
He was great. And if
the Candyman, yeah, he never made an All-Star game.
Yeah, I didn't think so. Maybe that's a level. Maybe that's the peak level when it's talking about like a type of player.
Yeah,
and the level of player. Maybe that's like his absolute peak. Lamar Odom should have been an all-star, by the way. Like, he had all-star level talent. He was just a big dum-dum.
Yeah, he was so awesome. Yeah, the difference I would say, though, is Baisley does, I mean, even already in his first year, and especially in the bubble, like, he's aggressive. He's aggressive offensively.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he goes and gets his. He does not wait around.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that makes me want to project him even higher in terms of his ceiling, just because he's not a guy that's going to, it seems like it's going to take a while. Like, he's, you were talking about how Steven Adams will like never shoot a three until he is absolutely 100% certain that the time is ready. Whereas like Baisley's the complete opposite of that. Like, he was doing things by the end of the year that we would like have never guessed that he would be able to do in his rookie season.
I know. Because
he's just constantly trying things on the court.
Yeah. And he just turned 20. Still very young. He's certainly a wild card in this whole rebuild. Because if he turns out to be a starting level player in the NBA, that is that I cannot understate how big of a deal that is. and also mostly because of his versatility. He's a lefty. He can guard multiple positions already. He can play really 3 through 5 already. And I don't know. He's interesting. Somebody was asking the question, I can't remember who it was on Twitter, where he would go in this draft this year. You have any thoughts on that?
Well, real quick, Bet Edwin said, have you ever compared Baisley's stats to Domas's rookie season? They are identical. I got to say, that's like an argument against Baisley for me because Sabonis was so bad and his rookie season stats are so bad. And obviously it was not reflective of the player that Sabonis was, but that actually scares me more.
Why does it scare you?
Because the stats were so bad. And like we knew that Domas was in a bad position that season, that he was either playing out of position or just wasn't in a good system for him. Whereas I don't think you can necessarily make that argument with Baisley. I mean, Baisley was given a lot of freedom in ways that Sabonis wasn't. So if they're putting up similar terrible stats, I might need to lower that ceiling a bit. In terms of where Baisley would go, I'd put him like late lottery. Maybe right behind recently lotteried man RJ Hampton.
Yeah, in that, yeah. And you can make arguments that Hampton it would be more valuable just because he does have that burst of speed as a guard. That's really hard. I mean, that's hard to find.
But put him above Aaron Naismith.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Let's get Aaron Naismith out of here.
Oh, somebody said Baze is our BAM.
Baze is our BAM.
He's got to put on a lot of weight.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Baze's stats. He was 34, almost 35% from 3. The thing, he didn't play as many minutes as Sabonis, did he?
No. Sabonis played a ton of minutes.
Yeah, he played a lot.
Season.
I don't know. Basically, to me, the difference in projecting is that Baisley already defends at a really good level, and on the perimeter and close to the basket. And so, if you believe in the shot, which I don't know if you can even use the playoffs as if you believe in the shot statement, because he was, well, it's kind of he was 22% from 2, but he was 50% from 3. If you believe in the 3-point shot, he's got to get stronger. He's got to be able to finish around the basket. That's what killed him. He didn't take very many shots from 2. So he took 22 threes in the playoffs. He was 11 of 22. You know how many 2-point attempts he took?
In the bubble?
In the playoffs.
20.
9. He was 2 of 9. So, I mean, like, when you say 22%, you're like, oh, boy.
That includes dunks?
It includes any 2-point shot.
Man, I think of him more as like a get out and transition guy. I'm surprised there weren't more like easy layups there.
Yeah, it wasn't there.
I think the other
He had one dunk.
He had one dunk. The other difference in comparing them is that Sabonis was so much more developed by that point. I mean, coming out of Gonzaga, I mean, everyone knew what skills Sabonis had. We just weren't able to show them off in his time with the Thunder. Whereas Baisley was basically a blank slate. We knew nothing about what his skills were, and everything we learned was like a brand new piece of data.
Yeah, and he was basically a year older than.
Yeah, true.
Coming into the league, which is not that big a deal, but yeah, I mean, you look at his stats. I mean, Sabonis was 32% from 3, so not quite as good. 39% from the field. 65% from the free throw line on like no attempts.
On no attempts. It was a bad rookie season. I had honestly given up. And it was just because he wasn't being put in a position to succeed.
Yeah, and he couldn't have been on the Thunder that year.
But that's what's so weird, because that was an important season, or we thought it was an important season. It was just weird that they were so excited to go draft him.
They were thinking of the future. They weren't thinking the present stuff was more like let's just see what he could do. Like can he do this? Like we don't know.
But they were starting him. It wasn't like they were easing him into anything.
Yeah, because the belief in him was so high, and it still is. Like that's is one of their favorite draft picks ever. I mean, he's one of their guys, and the belief in him was so tremendous that it's like we can play him out of position just to get him on the court because we believe in him to play the right way, and to defend and to play hard, and make good passes. And if he can hit threes, great. If he can't, we're going to eventually get rid of Cantor. And if we have to make way for him, we can get rid of Adams. That was always the thought. It was never like, okay, this year, let's maximize Sabonis. It was never that. They knew they couldn't. It was impossible. If you were trying to maximize him, the minutes weren't there. The minutes weren't there.
I mean, honestly, trading him after that rookie season for Paul George, like that was maximizing everything.
Yeah. The Pacers, and a lot of it's funny because at that point, they're not really going off of what he was doing in Oklahoma City because everybody knew that he was playing the wrong position.
Right.
They're looking at Gonzaga stuff. Like, or they're looking at the pre-draft that they knew. Like, what do we know about this guy? Well, one, we know for sure he's not a 4. One, we for sure know he's not a guy that's going to hit above the break threes all the time. Like, that's not going to be his job. His job is going to be, he's going to be an outstanding rebounder. He's got crazy touch in the paint. And if he can learn to use his right hand, like he's going to be a monster. And he's a monster.
He is. And maybe the future of the Pacers. If Oladipo and Miles Turner are moved.
Best player on the Pacers already.
Nah, I don't think that's a good thing.
You're not a Domas guy.
Well, if your best player is Domas, like, good luck.
That's the Pacers, though, man. There's organizations that are content with like just being in the game, being in the conversation.
But 2 years ago, you would have said like, "Wow, they have this core of Oladipo, Sabonis, Turner, and then they bring in Brogdon." It's like that was building towards something.
Yeah,
and now it feels like you're just back in the quagmire, just hanging out in the middle.
They're totally cool with that. Thunder, not cool with that.
Hey, we'll see. They better trade someone, Andrew, because that's where we're going to be. That's where we're going to be. I listened to your Monday pod. You guys had us around the 10th spot in the West. That's no good. I don't want to be there.
If they keep Chris.
Yeah, I know. I don't want to be there.
Yeah, I don't want to be there either. Shout out to Zach Prince and his new baby, Lyndon.
What's up, baby?
For Thunder.
London.
What? London. I'm sorry. My gosh, help me. London. I'm so sorry. Big shouts. Let's see. This is Bangelo. Penny wants to know, when is the draft? It's the 18th of November. Somebody's already answered that question below. Let's see.
What is your guess for the target date for the NBA news boom this quote-unquote summer? I mean, it's probably going to be like the week leading up to the draft is when we'll probably start getting some juicy rumors, especially with these 2 first picks. The first and second pick, I bet one of those will be traded. Don't you think?
Oh, it's going to get juicy. Yeah.
At least one of those.
Definitely.
So that week before. So we're looking like less than a month out from the news boom.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to get some weak rumors in these next couple weeks. But that week before the draft, that's where the good stuff's going to be.
Yeah, I agree.
Andrew, will we make a prediction now? Will we hear a rumor from a reputable source that the Oklahoma City Thunder are actively trying to move up in this year's draft?
No.
Oh, okay. Well,
I mean, here's how it would happen. It would be like similar to like this. I mean, and they were trying to move up to get Sabonis, but they were shopping Serge Ibaka to do that. I mean, they're shopping. They'll be quote unquote shopping Chris Paul, and if they can get the 8th pick from the Knicks in a deal, cool. I think they would like that. And they'll probably take somebody way like off the wall. They'll take Killian Hayes or something, and we'll all be confused about what to think. But yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of stuff available. This draft is not great. And so if you're at the top and you need to be good, the Thunder have some guys that can help you be good today. There's not a lot of guys like I don't know if Obi Toppin is going to make you a better team. I don't know if Denny is going to make you a better team today. I don't know. I know that Anthony Edwards is probably not going to make you a better team today. James Wiseman probably not going to make you a better team today. That's another guy. Like if the Thunder could trade for the number 2 pick and take James Wiseman, I'd be pretty pumped and jacked about that.
Really?
Yeah. He just got he could end up being the best player in this draft class. He really could be. He's got the potential to shoot it. And
doesn't excite me.
He can move. Like the dude can really, really move. He's not Gobert. Like the dude can move.
Yeah.
If the Thunder thought he was the guy, I'd be pretty pumped and jacked about that. I don't know if they do. I think Okongwu is a safer pick because I think you got it right there.
Jesse Holland said, "Will we always act like each of our next picks will be starters? It feels like we're asking for a lot. Baisley's signs of good stuff, but if we do this forever, it'll be disappointing. Am I just dumb?" I think we talk about them as starters because we hope the team tanks, and so by default they would be starters. Yeah. But I mean, like at this point, it just doesn't matter because regardless of how we project them, like they're probably going to lose a lot of games playing these guys a lot of minutes simply because they're young. Mm-hmm. There are young guys that do affect winning that are actual NBA starters, but it is hard to pick those out. And someone like Baisley, like I just don't know what to say. Like it still feels like such a blank slate that, you know, that's why I said his absolute ceiling would be like the way we talk about Lamar Odom, maybe, where it's, you know, he didn't make an all-star game, but he's respected as like a good quality NBA starter. But that's his ceiling. Like the median outcome for Baisley is just like maybe an energy big off the bench.
Multi-tooled energy big off the bench that can come off the bench, hit threes, change of pace type of guy because he can grab and go. He's already that.
But he's not like a good version of that yet.
He was good in the playoffs.
But it's like, yeah, I guess, I mean, he's still playing a decent amount of minutes in the playoffs.
Yeah. He played a lot more than I thought he would. And I honestly thought he should have played more. He was legitimately good in the playoffs. He hit enough threes. He played good enough defense where I think you could watch it. Like he was helpful on the court. And I don't think there's any doubt about that.
But yeah, I think we have to act like each of our next picks will be starters. Like, especially if we're picking high in future drafts. Just because there's no one else on the team.
They will start by default. And they will start out of developmental minutes. Like that's why they'll start, is because you want to see what you've got. And, you know, Will Hardy's going to have a big job in front of him.
Don't you mean Dan Craig?
I mean, Dan Craig.
I'm on Team Dan. You're on Team Will.
You're a big Dan man?
Yeah, your guy he watched his first basketball game in 2013. Dan has been with the Miami Heat for 17 years.
Like old. Get him out of here. Get the old man.
I wasn't even born yet.
Yeah. Either one of those guys those are interesting guys that would be willing to kind of cut their teeth as an NBA head coach.
The reason why I believe it is because we went through this whole period of talking about potential head coaches for like 2 weeks on Thunder Twitter. Yeah. And I never really heard those names talked about at any significant length. So now everything's calmed down, and now these two random names pop up to the top. So now I'm feeling like, ooh, this might make sense. Ooh. Even though we haven't heard like an official report.
Yeah, there's not an official report. These are still largely rumors. And maybe it's not even that these two names are the names that are on the list for the Thunder, but it's going to be guys like that. It will be assistant coaches like this that will get a chance to coach the Thunder.
Hey, last thing.
Yeah.
Before we go, do you agree with me that it's complete BS? It's a sideshow what the Rockets are doing, saying that they're bringing in Ty Lue and Jeff Van Gundy for interviews. No one thinks they're hiring either of those guys. They weren't able to give Mike D'Antoni a guaranteed $5 million per year last summer. They're only willing to give him $2.5 million guaranteed. And if he got fired at any point during that season, they wouldn't have given him the other half. And now all of a sudden they're going to get like one of the two hottest coaching names who's probably going to ask for north of $8 million per year. Like, it's just all for show. And this is what the Rockets do every single year. They do it with players, any free agent. The Rockets say, oh yeah, we're in him. We're in on him. We're very interested in going after him. He would look great on our team, whatever. And they're doing it now with coaches, and everyone's falling for it, thinking they're going to get a big name. They're not going to hire either of those guys. And if I have to eat crow on that, fine. But I don't think I will. I don't think they're going to hire either of those guys.
I think they should hire Ty Lue. If they want to win, hire Ty Lue. Do it.
They don't. What has changed significantly in a good way for Tillman Fertitta from him to not wanting to pay arguably one of their best coaches of all time a fair salary last summer to now wanting to break the bank for another coach? Like, I just don't buy it.
I mean, ESPN's story with Tim McMahon on Ty Lue's coaching candidacy with the Rockets, it's gaining momentum after Monday's meeting.
Well, obviously, if you have a interview that's could gain momentum, doesn't mean it's going to happen.
That's like one of those trick words that says that they're discussing like a real legit contract, gaining momentum.
I will be shocked and honestly pleasantly surprised for Rockets fans if they get like a big coaching name.
Yeah. I think he's a big coaching name that will ultimately fail the Rockets because I just don't think the Rockets can really get to the top of the mountain. Anyway.
It's probably true.
So, but it's interesting. And I also like Stan Van to the Pelicans.
Oh, I love that.
Love that.
Yeah.
Get me there.
Although we'd lose him from TV, and he was really good.
He's great. He's hilarious and very good. So, thanks for listening to our show today. You can follow Alex on Twitter at AlBabyCakes. You can follow me on Twitter at Andrew K. Schlecht. Follow our podcast at Down to Dunk. We appreciate you guys listening, tuning in, watching if you're on YouTube or on Periscope. You guys are the best. Make sure you leave us an Apple Podcast review. 5 stars would be so helpful. I will read that on the Friday pod. So get ready for that. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk to you guys again on Friday.